Welcome to i-TUTOR Economics NCERT series. Today we are going to deal with Chapter 5, Consumer Rights. We take part in market in two ways, as producers and as consumers. Producers means people who make or provide goods and services. For example, a farmer growing rice, a factory producing clothes, or a teacher giving tuition. Consumers means people who buy and use goods and services for their needs. For example, if you are buying rice from the shop, purchasing clothes, or paying for tuition, you are a consumer. These are called final goods because they are directly used by the consumer, not for further production. For example, suppose Ramesh grows vegetables in his field. Here he is a producer. When you or I buy those vegetables from the market and cook them at home, we are consumers. Now, why do we need rules and regulations? In the earlier chapter, we already discussed why rules are necessary. They are made to protect people from exploitation and to ensure fairness in society. So, we made rules and regulations for mainly three reasons. For the protection of workers in the unorganized sector, for protecting moneylenders in informal sector, and also for the protection of environment. Now, for the protection of workers in the unorganized sector. Many workers work for very low wages. They are often forced to accept unsafe or unhealthy conditions. Without rules, employers can easily exploit them. And now what about moneylenders, protecting moneylenders in the informal sector? Protection from moneylenders in the informal sector? Yes, moneylenders often charge very high interest rate. For example, a small farmer takes a loan for seeds. If he cannot pay back, the moneylender may force him to sell his produce cheaply or even sell his land. So now how to protect the environment? Yes, industries may pollute air, water and land if there are no rules. Rules are needed so that the environment and public health are protected. Over time, many organizations and movements have fought hard to make sure these rules are existed and followed. So why consumers need protection? Just like workers and farmers need protection, consumers also need rules and regulations in the marketplace. Mainly because consumers are weak in their position. Imagine you buy a mobile phone. After 2 days, it stops working. You go back to the shop, but the shopkeeper says, "Once sold, no guarantee. If you don't like it, go elsewhere." Here, the seller puts all the responsibility on the buyer, which is unfair. Many sellers act as if their job is done once the product is sold. So this leaves the buyer with no protection. To fight against this unfair situation, a consumer movement started. Its goal is to make sure that sellers also have responsibility towards buyers. Consumers often get cheated because of unfair trade practices by traders or shopkeepers. For example, less quantity than promised. For example, shopkeepers weighs 900 grams instead of 1 kg and charges for 1 kg. So the result is the buyer gets less than what they paid for. And they also charge extra. Sometimes traders are hidden costs which were not told earlier. For example, buying a ticket online and suddenly service charges appears. And adulteration or defective goods. Adulteration means mixing harmful or cheap materials in the food item. For example, mixing water in milk, stones in rice or soap in ghee. And defective goods means selling damaged or poor quality products as if they are fine. For example, selling expired medicine or a phone that doesn't work properly. Now, why markets are sometimes unfair for consumers? Yes, producers are big and consumers are small. So producers are few and powerful, whereas consumers purchase in small amount and are scattered. Consumers are many, scattered and buy in small quantities. So they are weaker in position. And large companies have money, power and influence. And they can, these big companies, they can control prices, supply and even influence government policies. Companies often use advertisements and promotions to mislead people. For example, milk powder for children. So they marketed it as better than mother's milk. And another example is cigarette manufacturing companies. They refuse to admit that smoking causes cancer. These were false claims and it took years of consumer struggle and court battles to expose the truth. And consumers waste money, risk their health, or make wrong choices. They cannot easily fight powerful companies alone. So the conclusion is, why rules are needed? Yes, to ensure fair play in the marketplace, to protect consumers from exploitation, misinformation, and harmful products, etc. So laws plus awareness plus consumer movements are essential for real protection. Now, consumer movement. The consumer movement arose out of dissatisfaction of the consumers as many unfair practices were being indulged in by the sellers. There was no legal system available to consumers to protect them from exploitation in the marketplace. For a long time, when a consumer was not happy with a particular brand product or shop, he or she generally avoided buying that brand product or would stop purchasing from that shop. It was presumed that it was the responsibility of the consumer to be careful while buying a commodity or service. It took many years for organizations in India and around the world to create awareness among people. This has also shifted the responsibility of ensuring quality of goods and services on the sellers. So, in India, the consumer movement as a social force originated with the necessity of protecting and promoting the interest of consumers against unethical and unfair trade practices. Rampant food shortage, hoarding, black marketing, adulteration of food, and edible oil gave birth to consumer movement in an organized form in 1960s. Until 1970s, consumer organizations were largely engaged in writing articles and holding exhibitions, and they formed consumer groups to look into the malpractices in ration shops and overcrowding in the road passenger transports. More recently, India witnessed an upsurge in the number of consumer groups. And now let's look at Consumer International in 1985. In 1985, the United Nations adopted UN guidelines for consumer protection. This was a tool for nations to adopt measures to protect consumers and for consumer advocacy groups to press their government to do so. So it strengthened consumer advocacy groups to pressurize government, and the result was Foundation for the Global Consumer Movement started. At the international level, this has become the Foundation for Consumer Movement. And today, Consumer International has become an umbrella body of almost 240 organizations from 100 countries. Because of all these efforts, the movement succeeded in bringing on business firms as well as government to correct business conducted which may be unfair and against the interest of consumers at large. A major step taken in 1986 by Indian government was the enactment of Consumer Protection Act 1986, popularly known as COPRA. So the major result was Consumer Protection Act of 1986. Now, safety is everyone's right. As consumers, we have the right to be protected from goods and services that can harm our life or property. Producers must follow safety rules and regulations. For example, pressure cookers have a safety valve which, if it is defective, can cause a serious accident. Manufacturers must ensure high quality protection. And what about role of government? Yes, government authorities supervise product quality. Consumer movement raises awareness and pushes for enforcement. And the current challenge is bad quality products still exist because supervision is weak and consumer movement is not strong enough in some areas. Now, information about goods and services. Consumers have the right to know important details about the goods and services they buy, like information provided on the packets, ingredients or components used, price of the product, batch number, date of manufacture, expiry date, manufacturer's address, and so on. A specific example is medicine. It contains directions for proper use, side effects, risk, and so on. And what about garments? It has instructions for washing and caring. So the purpose is to ensure that consumers can make informed choices and use products safely. So proper labeling and information protects consumers from unsafe or misleading products and help them use products correctly. Now, why manufacturers must display information? Consumers have the right to be informed about the products they buy. Purpose of displaying information are safety and quality. That means consumers can check expiry dates, ingredients, and other details to ensure the product is safe and suitable. And second reason is accountability. If the product is defective within the expiry period, consumers can demand replacement or compensation. And the third reason is preventing evasion of responsibility. Without printed information like expiry date, manufacturers could shift blame to shopkeepers. So, selling expired medicine lead to severe action against the producers. Selling goods above the printed price, consumers can complain or bargain since the price on the packet is MRP, that means maximum retail price. Proper information on packaging ensures consumer safety, fairness and protection from exploitation. Now, Right to Information Act of RTI Act of 2005. The RTI Act ensures that citizens have access to information about the workings of government departments. So it expands the principle of right to information from just goods and service to government service and decisions. Citizens can now demand information about government functioning, policies and use of public funds. So the key idea is, just as consumers have the right to know about the products, citizens have the right to know about government actions, which promotes transparency and accountability. When we buy commodities, we find that price charge is sometimes higher or lower than maximum retail price. Let's take some examples. Let's take example of Abhirami. Abhirami joined a 2-year professional course and paid rupees 61,020 rupees upfront. She left after 1 year due to poor quality of teaching. She requested a refund for the remaining period and the institute denied it. So the consumer court decision was the consumer court ordered the institute to refund rupees 28,000. Recognized that Abhirami had the right to choose and not be forced to pay for a service she did not receive. And what about State Consumers Commission? They upheld the refund of 28,000 and fined the institute rupees 25,000 for filing a frivolous appeal and ordered 7,000 as compensation and litigation cost. It directed all educational and professional institutes not to charge fees for the entire duration upfront, and violation may lead to penalties and imprisonment. Now, consumers' rights are right to choose, that means consumers should not be forced to pay for service not received, and right to compensation. Abhirami was compensated for harassment caused by the appeal. Now, protection against unfair trade practices. Charging full fees in advance for multi-year course is unfair. And right to seek redressal. The consumer forums protected her rights under the Consumer Protection Act of 1986. Now, right to choose. Every consumer has the freedom to decide whether to buy a product or to use a service. Unfair practices that force you to buy something you don't want violates this right. For example, toothpaste and toothbrush. If shopkeepers forces you to buy toothbrush along with toothpaste, your choice is restricted. Another example is gas connection and stove. If dealer insists you must buy a stove from them to get a new gas connection, it denies your freedom of choice. So why it matters? It protects consumers from being forced into unwanted purchases, ensures fair competition in the market. Now we are going to understand how advertisements try to attract consumers and whether they actually benefit it. So let's take example one by one. 15 gram more in every 500 gram pack. Here the consumer is actually getting more product for the same price. So this is a real benefit. Now, second, subscription for a newspaper with a gift at the end of a year. The gift is uncertain and may or may not be useful, so the benefit is not guaranteed. Now, a milk chocolate inside a 500 gram glucose box. The chocolate is small and hidden. Most consumers may not gain much from this. It's mostly a marketing trick. Now, win a gold coin inside a pack. The probability of winning is extremely low. So for most consumers, there is no real benefit. It's more like a gamble. Now, buy shoes worth rupees 2,000 and get one pair worth rupees 500 free. Here, the consumer clearly gets extra value for no extra cost, and this is beneficial offer. So let's summarize it. What we see is that not every attractive advertisement benefit the consumer. Some are real value offers like extra quantity or free items, and some are marketing gimmicks designed to attract attention. So this is why consumer protection laws exist, to make sure that companies don't mislead consumers with false or exaggerated claims. Now, where should consumers go to get justice? Consumers have the right to seek redressal if they face unfair trade practices or exploitation. If any damage is done, they can get compensation depending on how serious the damage is. For example, let's take the case of Prakash. Prakash sent a money order to his village for his daughter's marriage, but the money didn't reach her on time. He filed a case in the District Consumer Court in New Delhi. Through this court, he could take steps to claim compensation and ensure justice was saved. In India, the consumer movement has led to creation of local organizations often called consumer forums or protection councils. Consumer forums or consumer protection councils. These groups guide consumers on how to file cases in consumer courts and sometimes represent them in courts. Many of these voluntary organizations also receive government support to create awareness. For example, resident welfare associations in colonies can take up cases on behalf of their members if they face unfair trade practices. Under COPRA, what is the full form of COPRA? Yes, Consumer Protection Act of 1986. So under COPRA, a three-tier system was set up for resolving disputes. District courts handles claims up to rupees 20 lakhs. State courts deal with claims between 20 lakhs and rupees 1 crore. And national court handle claims above 1 crore. So if a case is dismissed at the district level, it can be appealed at the state and then at the national level. This act ensures that consumers have the right to seek justice in consumer courts. So to become well-informed consumers, we need to be aware of our rights while buying goods and services. This awareness helps us make informed choice and avoid being exploited. But how do we gain this knowledge? One way is through posters and campaigns that spread awareness about consumer rights. The Consumer Protection Act (COPRA) has also led to the creation of Consumer Affairs Department in both central and state governments. These departments help educate people about the legal processes they can use to protect themselves. Now, ISI and ACMARC. While buying products, you might have noticed logos like ISI, ACMARC or Hallmark on the packaging. These logos act as guarantee of quality for consumers. Okay, the organizations behind these marks set quality standards and allow producers to use the logo only if they follow these standards. Not all products are required to follow these standards, but for items that affect health and safety are mass consumed, like LPG gases, food colors, additives, cement and packaging, drinking water, for etc., certification is mandatory. This ensures that consumers can trust these products. So India observed 24th December as National Consumers Day, the day when Consumer Protection Act 1986 was enacted. India is one of the few countries with exclusive courts to handle consumer complaints. Over the years, the consumer movement has made progress. Today, there are more than 700 consumer groups in India. However, only about 20 to 25 are well organized and widely recognized for their work. Despite the progress, getting justice is not always easy. The consumer redressal program can be lengthy, costly, and time consuming. Often, consumers need to hire lawyers, and court proceedings takes time. Gathering evidence is also a challenge, especially since many retail purchases don't provide cash memos. Moreover, most purchases are small scale, making it harder to file complaints effectively. Even today, the existing laws are not very clear on compensations for consumers injured by defective products. More than 20 years after the enactment of COPRA, what happens? Consumer awareness in India is growing, but the process is still low. At the same time, enforcement of laws protecting workers, especially in the unorganized sector, remains weak. Rules and regulations that govern market practices are also often not properly followed. Despite these challenges, there is great potential for consumers to recognize their roles and importance. It is often said that consumer movement can succeed only with active participation or active involvement. Achieving this requires voluntary effort and a collective struggle involving everyone or involving the participation of all, one and all. So the conclusion is consumers play a vital role in shaping fair and safe markets. By being aware of their rights and actively participating in consumer movements, they can ensure better quality, safety and accountability from producers. Ultimately, informed and vigilant consumers are the key to a fair and just market price. So that's all about this chapter. Hope you understand. Thanks for watching. For more related contents, please do like, share and subscribe.